Hi, hello. Good morning to everyone. It's a real pleasure and a great honor to be here this morning. I know that many of you already know who we are and what we do, but for all of you who still don't know who we are, let me tell you that CESCE'S is not only an insurance company, but it is also the Spanish export credit agency. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about that side of our activity when we act on behalf of the state, okay? We have been managing extraordinary political and commercial risks since 1972, and we help Spanish companies to go abroad, and we help them with our support, with our coverage, and with our securities, okay? And Julio Fernandez, who is the head of sustainability in CESCE'S, and I and myself, we are going to try to shed some light on what we are doing right now in CESCE'S with regards to climate change, green policies, and green financing structures. So, Julio, welcome. The floor is yours, so when you wish.
Oh, thank you, Patricia. Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. As Patricia was saying, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here today. I would like to thank the World Bank and the Spanish Office of Climate Change for giving us the opportunity of being here today and just to share our experiences. We've seen in the agenda that most, if not all, of the relevant players in the field of climate finance are represented in this event. And that makes me think that maybe we are in the right direction to be, we're close to be one of these relevant parties. So thank you very much.
Let's start then. Julio, there have been recent news with regards to CESCE'S involvement in large green financing initiatives or transactions. Could you please explain a little bit how did you end up being so active?
Yeah, well, I have to say that we've been doing a lot of things in the climate finance arena in the last years. I would say that especially, or let's say that in the last years, especially, I would say that the beginning of 2020 was a very relevant milestone for us in the way that we designed and launched our climate change strategy. This is part of a very long road that we've been walking through during the last years, but we were working very closely with our guardian authorities to launch this strategy. This strategy is based mainly on three pillars: restrictions on the let's say the activities that are more intensive in greenhouse gases, in the emission of greenhouse gases. Incentives to bring more green products to our business, and transparency. And the lesson here is that it was key to be aligned with our guardian authorities. I think that Spain as a country, at least in the field of climate finance, has played a very relevant role, has been one of the leaders in pushing new policies and initiatives. And the proof of it is that is one of the founding members of the initiative Export Finance for Future. Just 6 countries were there when this initiative was created. Spain was, of course, one of those. And it is one of the countries and institutions that signed the COP26 statement in Glasgow, and this is extremely relevant in our view to work together with our guardian authority.
You have mentioned 2 initiatives, COP26 statement and Export Finance for Future, you said. Could you please elaborate a bit more on those two initiatives, because I'm not very much familiar with them?
Well, yeah, the export finance for future, also known as the E3F initiative, is an initiative that tries to align export finance with international climate goals, pushing for new policies and agreeing in this forum for, let's say, common ground and for example, new initiatives in the context of the OECD, for example, and one of the areas in which they're pushing more, they're trying to shift investment patterns towards carbon neutrality, and also they're trying to increase transparency in all our activities and products and policies. If you go to if you take a look at the E3F website, you will see that some of the exposure of all of the export aid agencies belonging to the countries that belong to this initiative.
Mm-hmm. Traditionally, CESCE has been known for having dealt with oil and gas projects, and those restrictions you have just talked about hit directly with that kind of activity. How are you managing that in CESCE?
Yeah, well, first of all, the first time we imposed conditions and restrictions to the oil and gas activities was in April 2021. When mostly some of our peers were not there yet. Now we have launched a new climate change policy to give a strong response to the COP26 statement. So basically, according to this new climate change policy, we can no longer provide support for the oil and gas activities. So just to, well, what the COP26 statement says is that all that countries and institutions that have signed that commitment, they can no longer provide support to fossil fuel energy activities. With some exceptional cases that they should be aligned with the Paris Agreement objectives. So basically, we can no longer provide support anymore to the oil and gas activities. We have defined some exceptional cases, only based on gas, but these are, in our view, quite aligned with the Paris objectives, and they're transitory. So we have committed ourselves to review all this policy on gas activities by 2026 at the latest. And on top of that, we have committed ourselves to our reduction pathway. So in 2035, compared to the 2022 levels, we need to reduce our exposure by at least 75%. My bet is that we will be by far below this number. So probably our reductions will be around maybe 90% or even more by that time. But just to give you a flavor of how important this commitment is, I would say that in the first quarter of 2020, CESCE'S exposure to oil and gas activities, mostly refining, that it is an activity that we can no longer provide support to, it was around 45%. So 45% of our portfolio in 2020 was oil and gas. I cannot imagine any type of business that overnight renounced to something that business that is that important. So it was a huge challenge for us to, let's say, to lose this business overnight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have widely explained what CESCE is doing right now, or even has been doing for quite a few years now. But have you any knowledge of what your peers are doing right now, or they have been doing for the past years, or are going to do in the future? Have you any idea of what they are doing right now?
Yeah, well,
and what are they?
I think, well, after Glasgow, after the COP26, a lot of countries launched similar climate change policies, let's say, with a lot of restrictions. But it's easy for some countries. When you stop doing something, or when you say that you will stop doing something that you haven't done in the past, your sacrifice is nothing. So I think that in terms of comparing ourselves with others, we need to compare ourselves with those countries that they had competitive industries in the oil and gas sector. So, and I would say that these countries are Italy, Germany, Korea, and the United Kingdom. So Italy has launched a policy which is, well, they will impose some restrictions in the future. So they, for example, they can do now refining. They will stop doing refining, or they have committed to stop doing refining in 1 year, 2 years' time. So their policies by far much less ambitious than ours. Then Germany. Germany hasn't disclosed anything yet, despite they signed the COP26 statement. They have the Green Party not only in the parliament, but also in the government, and they haven't disclosed anything because, you know, they have this special circumstances regarding the energy crisis that all of us will know. But the fact is that they haven't committed publicly to make any restrictions or conditions on on the oil and gas activities. Then we have Korea. In Korea, we know that maybe Asia in this continent, they are not as sensible as we are in Europe to, let's say, the climate change problem. So it's more or less the same. They haven't disclosed anything, and my feeling is that they will be they will support some oil and gas projects in the coming future. And then we have the United Kingdom, that they have published something that it may look like very ambitious, and it is, and they pushed us to sign the COP26. But just two considerations on this. They were, let's say, in the other side of the road some years ago. They had the political incentive of hosting the COP26 in Glasgow, so that was very important for them, and that's why they've been pushing so hard. But that's good news, of course, but on the other hand, they have some working capital facilities through which they can provide support to British oil and gas companies as long as they have credible transition plans. Most of the oil and gas companies have transition plans. Credible is something we can discuss about. But this is a way for them to provide support for the oil and gas industry. We don't have this mandate, we don't have this product, so we can't use this type of tools to do that. So I think in general terms, we are in a position that we can say that we have shown to be quite ambitious.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back again to the restrictions you have been talking about before, okay? Because in some way, tell me if I'm wrong, I think that CESCE has rejected its main business. I mean, in some way we could say that. So I would like to know how CESCE has overcome that situation. I mean, I imagine it has been, or it is still being, tough.
Now, of course, it was a great challenge, and you know, we were shocked in the beginning when we knew that half of our business was gone. At some point, we had to, let's say, redefine our business, our products, and as I was saying in the beginning, you know, our climate change policy is based on 3 pillars: restrictions that we just talked about, transparency, and incentives. And what we did by that time is to try to develop this side of our strategy, launching new products, and it has worked. The thing is that if you, well, when you're losing this important business, your initial thought is that your portfolio is gonna be much smaller than it is right now. This is not what has happened. Our portfolio has increased since, if we compare where we were at our peak, that I mentioned that in the first quarter of 2020 was 45% of our portfolio was oil and gas. Now our portfolio as a whole is bigger, almost 30% bigger than in just 3 years. And this is due to several factors, but one of the key factors is the green products. We have designed these green products. If we, let's say, analyze the support we were given in 2020 to green transactions, the proportion of it has increased by 50% in these 3 years, and especially in the last year, where all these green new products have starting to work.
So we can conclude that you are not only happy, but I see that you are really satisfied with the outcome, we would say.
Yeah, I think our experience has been extremely positive so far. We are very happy with that. Well, I'm a risk analyst. I have this type of bias. I think the time frame is not big enough to reach solid conclusions. So we are optimistic, but maybe we need to come back in a couple of years and see where we are, because as I was saying, the time frame is not as big as to say that the trend has consolidated. Good news, but short story. As I was saying, the new products were developed 1 year ago, so they're working very well. There's some appetite in the market, but let's be prudent for now.
Okay, let's talk then about those new products that you have just mentioned. Okay, could you explain to the audience which are those products, what they consist on for green sustainable projects?
Yeah, well, the first thing was just to enhance and try to provide some extra flexibilities to the products, our traditional products that we had we were offering to the market. For them, we have worked, well, we can provide, let's say, flexibility in 4 main areas. No fees for, let's say, for exporters or banks that are working for us when they bring sustainable projects. Then we can get, sometimes this will very much depend on the regulation we have to apply, but when we can apply discounts to the premium, which is of course very attractive always. And in markets, when we have some limitations, there will be some special considerations for these green projects. And then the most important one is that we have had traditionally some limitations in terms of Spanish content. And Spanish content is the factor that defines the maximum amount we can support. So For regular projects, this amount, national content is limited up to 30 or 40%. So maximum amount will be 3.3 times this amount, or 2.5 in the case of 40%. But for green products, it's 20%. So we can provide fivefold the amount of the Spanish content. So just to give an example in numbers, if you have a contract with 10 million Spanish content, in the case of a green product, we will be able to support 50 million US dollars, euros, whatever. And in the case of a regular project, might be 25 million. So the difference is huge. And then we have created what we call the investment green policy, which is much more flexible than our traditional products, and it's working very, very good. Through this product, there's no need of an export. We can provide support different schemes, project finance, corporates, and the only condition is that there needs to be a company which is in Spanish control, maybe different shareholders, but the control needs to be Spanish. And as I was saying, is working very, very well. It is much more flexible. We have changed a little bit as well the understanding of what we were considering, or the reference we had for a project to be considered as green or sustainable. Now we have a broader understanding. We're using the European Union taxonomy, but also other references in the market.
Can you give us a hint of the appetite of green transactions, or could you give us your impression or your thought about the initiatives or the transactions you have right now in CESCE under consideration with regards to those green sustainable projects?
So you mean the standards we're using just to see what is sustainable and what is not? Well, this is a very good question, so I need to drink a little bit. Well, this is something I think very sensitive, and from the very beginning, and we are working on behalf of the state. So one of the things when we designed this strategy, one of the most important things we needed to achieve is to try to reduce as much as possible the risk of being accused of greenwashing. This has been a priority for us. So for this to be done, we needed very solid references and criteria for us to decide whether a project is green or not. So we are basically using two. One is the climate change sector understanding included in the OECD arrangement. We are highly regulated by the OECD as an export credit agency, and this is one of the reference documents with which we have to work very extensively, that defines the financing conditions we can support and provide. And they have this special sectoral understanding in which they define some products that they can be benefited from special conditions. And well, I would say that, of course, renewables, all renewables projects are there, some water projects and some energy efficiency projects. But then we are also using, as I was saying before, the European Union taxonomy, which in my view is a very, very good document, very solid from a technical standpoint. It is complex, on the other hand, which is quite challenging. But yeah, we are using it very extensively, and one of the good things of the European Union taxonomy as well is that it is very realistic. They are it has incorporated some activities that are not intuitively green, such as the production of cement and other industrial activities, very intensive in energy consumption, but they have imposed very stringent conditions. So the technology for those sectors to be green, the technology has to be state-of-the-art, very efficient, and I think this is positive because we can now live without these activities in our economies, and they're trying to push for these sectors to be much more efficient. That's a good thing.
Mm-hmm. I see that now you have a very much wider knowledge of what sustainable means. Okay, even though we know that it is quite a slippery term, you know, that many times it is used in a very much flexible way. That is not our case. So, and you have said that you refer to the European Union taxonomy. We know that we have been talking about this before, that the European Union taxonomy is quite difficult to refer to or to use in sometimes because, first of all, because of the complexity of the requirements, okay? But second, because many of the projects you are dealing with or you're working on are settled in other geographies different from the European Union. How do you manage that in CESCE?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a very good point, because the thing with the European Union taxonomy is that it's full, it's of course consistent, it's full of references to European Union directives and so on and so forth, and Europe is not a big market for us, so most of our projects are in developing countries, so we need to bring them to comply with European regulation, which may look like a little bit weird. But we have some experience doing that, let's say asking projects and sponsors to comply with regulations that are more stringent, more ambitious, and that they go far beyond the local regulation. We've been doing this when assessing environmental and social risks. From the 90s, we have a regulation that is quite similar to the Equator Principles, according to which we need to benchmark all the projects we support against the I4C, the IFC performance standards in terms of labor, social, environmental aspects. So this previous experience doing that has been very useful in this case. And what we're doing now, and it's very similar to what we did in the past, and we still doing with the environmental and social aspects, is that in some cases when we don't have clear or we are not sure whether the project is in compliance from the very beginning with the requirements of the European Union taxonomy, we ask the sponsor to hire a second-party opinion, an international consultant with good experience, and they provide a preliminary opinion on the alignment of the projects with the European Union taxonomy, and they do somehow, like, let's say, a gap analysis. So they identify the actions that the project needs to be implemented to be fully aligned with the European Union taxonomy, and those conditions, those actions are included in the loan documentation. So if at some point, and we are involved in projects maybe sometimes for 15, 16 years, if at some point the project is not aligned, there's a material non-compliance, and there's evidence that there's not full alignment, we can trigger an event of default and ask for the money back. Mm-hmm. So, and this may seem quite, let's say, quite stringent for sponsors, but it's working. We're doing this. and we're happy with the outcome so far. So it's let's say doable.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we know that CESCE has been doing a very hard work for many years. It's not something recent, and you said before that this was a very long pathway, okay, and that we were not in a final destination, okay, that it's only a station. Could you please explain a bit more what are the next steps you're going to take in CESCE?
Yeah, well, we've been doing. Well, we think we've been doing a lot of things in the last years. But yeah, you're right. This is something that I wouldn't say has just started, but we're seeing more and more initiatives, tools in the market, and for just to answer what's next or what will be next for us, future actions, I will come back to the 3 pillars of our strategy. So regarding restrictions, we have what we think it is a pretty ambitious package in terms of restrictions, but we have committed ourselves to review our policy for let's say for the exceptions we have regarding gas by 2026 at the latest. So this is something important. And then in terms of transparency, we've been working extensively in the last months in developing a methodology to calculate the carbon footprint of our portfolio. We are well, we will have this methodology probably in the coming weeks. We have committed ourselves to work towards working in aligning our procedures with the recommendation of the TCFD, which is the most relevant initiative in terms of transparency, and so we will end up probably defining some reduction targets of our carbon footprint in the future. Then I would say that there are some other relevant initiatives in the market that we will be exploring to incorporate, such as the science-based targets, or maybe to reach some kind of commitment, net zero by 2050. It's always there. Some of our peers have published this or have committed to this objective. This is something that we haven't done yet because we want to make sure, as I was saying, we want to avoid any risk of being accused of greenwashing. So in order for us to publicly commit with this objective, we want to make sure that it's reachable and that we have a plan with concrete actions to be there. And then in terms of incentives, I would say that we're always working on trying to enhance and provide more flexibilities and to adapt our existing products to the needs of coming from the market. And we know now that the standards we're using are going to change. The climate change sector understanding of the OECD is going to be extended and enhanced, and it will be publicly available and probably enforced by next summer. This is something important. And we know now that there are some delegated acts, new European taxonomy delegated acts that have been published and are under consultation right now, and they will come into force very, very soon as well. So this is something that we will pay special attention and that we will use in the future as a reference as well. And on top of that, with a very well-known consultancy, international consultancy firm, we are developing at a corporate level an exercise which we can call the Sustainability Master Plan. That it's something that there are so many things that they've been looking Well, what they're doing now is to try to produce a report of where we are right now at a corporate level in terms of sustainability, and when we need to be in the coming future in terms of governance, products. And so the expectation is that from this exercise, when they, let's say, reach their conclusions, we will have some extra homework to do, and we will probably learn something that we don't know now.
Okay, talking about learning, I can imagine that all along that long pathway you have already walked, I imagine that you have learned many lessons, and that now you are in a position of giving or being able to giving some advice to other companies that are going through the same pathway that you have been walking or still are. Could you give those other companies which are in the same you know, in the same mood as you and in the same position with the same commitment, could you give them any recommendation, or could you explain or talk about any lesson, a special lesson learned all over these years?
Yes, well, I would say now that there are a lot of initiatives, tools, products in the market, and this is something that sometimes might be a bit confusing. So I would say that it is good to, let's say, to know as many initiatives as you can, but then choose and try to use some of them, because otherwise you'll get lost, you'll get confused, and your clients will also get lost and confused, probably. You know, there are so many acronyms and initiatives in the market that it's maybe too much, and especially at this in the financial sector, which is the one I know. And the other thing is that just be brave and optimistic. As I was explaining in the beginning, at some point we found ourselves in a point that we can no longer provide support to an activity which has been traditionally very important for us, 45%. It is true that it was just few amount of transactions, just 10 out of more than 2,200, but very large in volume, and to see yourself overnight with this, losing this type of activities, challenging, but we are, let's say, the living proof that you can overcome this situation, being creative and designing some new products to explore new businesses and bring some other transactions. So maybe in our case we're a political tool. It's a little bit different than what other people can find. But maybe for other parties, they should do this more gradually. But my advice would be, don't be afraid, try to do it. We are, as I was saying, the living proof that this is something that can be done in a successful manner. Let's see if in the coming future this trend consolidates, and maybe we can come in a couple of years' time and bring some numbers and show you something more specific than today. But I think we will encourage others to follow the road we've been going through the last years. And I will also encourage anyone that if anyone has any doubt or specific, please, you can always contact us, and we will be more than happy to help you your doubts and queries. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that our main goal today was to shed some light on what CESCE'S was doing, and I think that you have been very clear. And I think that I just repeat what you said. If anyone has a question or needs something from us, we will most happy to answer your questions or to give you the advice you may need. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And given that this session has not been as crowded as others, maybe if you have a question, maybe we can go to the bar even and have a coffee. so we can chat more in a more relaxed,
in a more informal
context.
way.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Julio. It's been a pleasure to share these moments with you, and thank you very much for coming and for listening to us this morning. Thank you so much.